get data in and out of your data layer. And this is one of the things that I think appealed to a lot of people early on. And they said, you know what? Developing modules in DotNetNuke is really pretty simple. All you really have to build is your business logic. And you have to configure your user controls and the layouts of the screens, and you have to hook everything together properly, but it's really pretty straightforward to do this. So if we were to look at these other info and controller objects, they look exactly the same. One is a set of business objects, the other is the implementation of the methods. And I forgot to show you the two optional methods here, interfaces. So if we look at the ISearchable, there's one method, it's get search items. Okay. In this case, basically you can see what we do. Can everybody read that okay, or should I bump the font up? Can you guys read it? Tell you what, hold on.
Now it's too big. I can't see it at all.
It's too big.
I'm kidding. I kid.
So basically, I'm just going to get a search item info, okay, which is one of my business objects, and a collection of these things. All right, and then just go through and get. So I get this thing called a suggestion ID controller. All right, we didn't look at all the controllers and objects, but the suggestion ID controller is one of those. We call it get suggestion IDs. So it's a special purpose little interface that's just used to get a list of the objects of all the suggestions in the portal. Okay. So once we get that, we have an array list of suggestion IDs. Then what we do is we go out using those IDs, and we use this SC object, which is the suggestion controller, and actually get the suggestions individually by ID. So now you just loop through all the IDs that you found and grab each suggestion item. And then with each suggestion item, you create a new search item info, which is this, which is what's effectively defined by the ISearchable interface. And you pass in a set of data, all right, that you kind of define how you want your search data to look on the portal. So what I've done here is I take the module title, add a hyphen to it. Sorry, the module title itself is the name that the person gave who put the module on the page. Right? They gave it's called Wrox suggestion in the example I used. And the dot title here is the title of the suggestion itself. So when I entered a suggestion, it was lunch this Friday. So we give you the module name hyphen suggestion name. All right. So essentially, what you're going to end up with here, when you search in .NET is you're going to find that it returns a list that looks very Google-like. You know, a list of items which have URLs plus like a title, you know, that's formatted in a particular way. So in this case, it gives you the name of the module and each individual item's title, you know, going down the list. You know, so it just formats it real nicely for you. This is where you have to use a little bit of imagination to figure out what looks good, you know, coming out to the user. So you play around with it. So each module will do this in a unique way, probably, depending on the data that you're storing. All right. And you can look at the standard .NET modules and see how they did all theirs. And you go, oh man, that's really clever what they did there, and I can use that idea in my module. You know? So that's why it's really good to look through, you know, the standard modules that are provided. Right. So that's the search interface, and basically, as a host user, you have control of, well, the search indexing is done usually on a schedule. Okay, but the host user can also go in and say, you know, re-index the site. And basically what happens is that the .NETNuke infrastructure will go through, look at each module and say, does it implement ISearchable? If it does, then it calls this get search items method on that module, which will then return all its data, okay, and include it in the search index. So pretty straightforward. It does what you would expect. Right. The other is the iPortable interface, and that has two methods, an export module and an import module. Okay. What you're doing here is creating an XML file, which contains the content of your module. So, you know, I just started with a string builder, use an XML writer, you know, so that I can do things like indent equals true, you know, to create formatted XML so it's human readable. All right, and then you do the same thing. You just go through. So the right start element, suggestion data. Okay, so that's the root element, and then for each suggestion type, I give a list of suggestion types with its value, okay, and then I write the end element, so I get the entered suggestion type. So basically the XML file contains all the types that were entered for this module, and then all the suggestions themselves. So that's what happens down here. You use the display controller to go and get the individual suggestion items and create each suggestion with all of its properties. All right, you just fill out the XML file, and then eventually you just return this XML to string. The string builder to string method just returns that created XML. So hopefully you're thinking here, I can use link to XML and do this very, very nicely, and of course then you'll be stuck with using framework 3.5 for your module. But certainly you can use link to XML to create this it'll do it a little cleaner than this. All right, and then the import module does the opposite. It uses basically XML nodes, gets the content suggestion data, pulls the types out, then it goes down in and looks for the individual suggestion items and pulls those properties out. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Here's the problem. All right, so I have suggestion modules over here, or let's just say they're announcements or whatever. All right, there's some sort of data that's on this portal, and I export the data from this portal, and I import it onto this other portal. Well, some of the fields here are a title description, but also there are created by, all right, what user created this field and when it was created. Well, the problem is on that portal and that portal, the users are different, so you can't really pass the user IDs across. Okay, and you also have to be careful if you're joining data between multiple tables because you get, the keys all have to match each other. So what you end up doing is creating some sort of a structure that lets you, you sort of have to dummy your keys, and then when you unload, when you import it into the other portal, you just have to match things back up manually. So it's not quite as easy as you think. And you have to deal with things like, no users over here. So basically, the way I handle that in here is when you import suggestions into another portal, it just uses the user ID of the person who's doing the importing. So they all end up looking like they came from that user. That's the easiest way to do it. I mean, I could have passed the string names and then try to match it to a user in that other portal if the string name was the same. What if it wasn't the same? You're not going to find it. So you can do it any way you want to do it. You just have to deal with the import and the export yourself on both ends. Okay, so that's the business logic layer. All right, let's go and take a look at the last piece. Getting close on time here. All right, so basically what's left is your user controls and your code behind. Okay, so we've already seen a little bit here, the suggestion. Let's just look at the whole code here. All right. Actually, let's not start there. All right. Let's start here. Look at the designer. This is a rotten one because there's not much here. All there was that string, and then saying here's what the instructions, and then after you enter a suggestion, it came back and it said thank you for entering something. So let's look at the settings module. That one's much more interesting. All right. So here you see that basically it's just it looks very, very similar to what you'd expect to see in any ASP.NET application. What you do have in here, though, when you localize and style your module, is you're going to see that there's a set of resource keys. All right. So this thing happens to be called, the ID is labeled suggestion types. There's also a resource key labeled suggestion type. So if you actually, resource key lets you specify what the name of this thing is, what the name of the resource is. Right. So now I'm going to hop out. I'm sorry for jumping around so much, but it kind of comes together very nicely once you see it. So we look in the local resources directory, and we'll find an edit_suggestion.ascx.resx file, a resources file, which actually contains a set of key value pairs. All right. So here's a key, the name, and then the value. So in the case of label, what was that called?
We're in the settings.
That's edit settings. You were in settings.
Yeah. Right, that's why I couldn't find it. So, like the